Good evening. So glad you're here with us this evening. This is the longest night service, or some folks call it Blue Christmas. It goes by other names as well. It's an evening in which we gather for a very different purpose. Christmas and holiday season generally is all about celebration. Joy, joy, joy. Joy to the world. Hark the herald angels sing. And glory, glory, glory. That's not always the case for everyone. Even in the midst of the happiest families, there's sometimes sadness, there's sometimes loss, and there's sometimes a sense of grief that just goes unspoken. And so this evening we come to a service where we actually give space for that. We welcome that. We don't walk away from it. We don't pretend it's something to be ashamed of, something we should hide from, or something that we want to ignore. We want to welcome the difficulty, the sadness, even in the midst of a joyous season. So the music's going to be mostly somber. You'll recognize some things that are played on organ. You'll hear a couple of things familiar that we will sing. And then you'll hear a very familiar tune with different text. And that's in the music that you have there on your seats where you're seated. So I welcome you this evening to talk, to share your own experiences, to say the things that you maybe haven't had a place to say yet. And I also welcome you to be silent. If you don't want to say a single word, that's fine too. I'm not going to go around the room and call each person by name and ask you to do something. That's not what this is about. This is a place where you're welcome to do anything like of the sort, but not to be compelled to do so. So we'll be stopping as we go through. We'll have several things I'll talk to you about. There'll be some prayers, there'll be some music, there'll be a couple of readings. And then the very last part of the service, the last probably half to a quarter of the service, really is focused on the how-tos. The technical pieces of how do you do this thing of dealing with grief in the midst of a joyous season. So let's turn our attention once more to music as Carol plays I Wonder as I Wander. Before we sing in just a moment, I want to call your attention to something that we want to keep firmly in our mind this evening as we talk and as we share things. That is This is not a time for perfection. Society puts a lot of pressure on us to do things well, to be the best at whatever it is that we're studying or learning about or trying to do. There's not a contest when it comes to grieving. Even if you do it well, you don't get an award. You don't get a trophy. You don't even get a participation award. The whole point of grieving is to get through it and to not try to make it go faster, to not try to avoid, to not see it as something to simply get past as a mile marker on the road, but something that's a season for you. And to recognize that your experience and your time and your walk through grief will be yours. You're not going to do it the way anyone else does it because you are you. And this is not a time for comparisons. It's not a time to argue among yourselves. It's not a time to fight with people who mean well, but say just the most inane things in the world, such as, "It's been 3 months. Why are you so sad?" Or, "Heaven must have needed another angel. That's why your loved one is gone." I will encourage you to step away from them before you smack them across the face for saying something so foolish and heartless. People mean well, but often they don't know what to say or do. And sometimes silence really is golden. When it comes to grief, silence really can be okay. Presence is important. Being present is most important. So I'll keep that theme going as we talk this evening about the idea of being present for yourself, being present with others, surrounding yourself with people who can be present for you and not push you to do or say things a certain way, but will walk with you on your journey, because it is your journey. I invite you to find your singing voice if you can, and if you don't, that's okay. We're going to look at the hymn, "In the Bleak Midwinter." We're going to sing the first, fourth, and fifth stanzas in the Bleak Midwinter. There should be a copy there on the chair for you. And instead, we'll sing the first, fourth, and fifth verses of this as we share together the beauty of this hymn. Let's sing. In the bleak midwinter, frosty wind made moan, as the heart as iron, water like a stone, snow had fallen, snow, 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 snow. In the bleak midwinter, long ago. What stanza? Angels and archangels, they have gathered there. Cherubim and seraphim throng the air. But His Mother holy and our maiden blessed, worship the beloved In a moment, I'll be asking you to talk a little bit about what brings you here this evening. I want to share with you just a few thoughts about why I think we're here this evening. I think we're here this evening because we need to be here. It's a very self-selected group. There's no pressure to come. It's not a Sunday morning service. It's not a regularly scheduled service. It's not a time that features food, a rarity in Baptist circles. We're not feeding you. We're not giving you reasons to come and celebrate. There's no ice cream truck waiting for you outside, although maybe we should do that some year. Something nice and chilly on a chilly night. But we do gather for a reason. You have your own reasons for coming. I have my own reasons for being here. And I'll share just a tiny bit of that with you. For me, it's important that we give hope in talking about difficult subjects. For the last 24, 25 years, I've found a lot of joy in sharing hope in the midst of difficult circumstances. And I've come to love the longest night service, the Blue Christmas service, where we give honor and space to the sadness and the darkness and the pain that also comes along with the joy. I find it's refreshing to recognize the reality. Our world is tough. You don't have to look very far beyond your own driveway, beyond your own windows to see the toughness. You can't escape it when you're looking at the news and watching and hearing the news cycles. There's so much hurt and pain and sadness and great loss. Sometimes we get overwhelmed with that great loss, don't we? And we lose sight of the fact that we have our own individual losses. And sometimes we minimize what it is that we feel inside because it's like we feel it's not worthy. It's so small by comparison. And this doesn't really matter because the other losses are so big and so great. Yes, they are large. They are great. They're horrific. And your loss matters too. The losses you talk about matter. The losses you don't talk about matter. The hurts you carry inside of you that you can't vocalize to anyone matter. That's why I think some of us are here this evening. And that's why I'd say that you're always welcome to talk about what's bringing you here, and you're welcome to be silent. Because some things go beyond our ability to talk about in a group or even to ourselves. Let's spend just a few moments more. Listen to the music of A Dove Flew Down from Heaven as Carol plays, shall we? One of the great joys I have had in my professional life was some years back working at Children's Hospital. I got to work with just a fascinating and brilliant group of doctors, nurses, researchers, social workers, child life development specialists, and chaplains and other caregivers. One of my favorite people there had a question that she would often use in talking with the parents of children who were very, very ill. She was a wonderfully skilled nurse. She had 2 doctorates, not just one, because one wasn't enough for her. But you never would have known that she had studied so hard and was such an academic person necessarily. You might figure it out after a while, because she was very good at what she did. But she was very human and very warm. And she could take the most difficult situation and had a way of usually making it into something more comfortable and better than it had been before she walked in the room. One of the ways she did that, she used a question that I quickly adopted, and she gave me her permission to use. In talking with all the parents and caregivers and nurses and doctors, and they were talking about technical details of the plan of care for very sick children, she would at some point turn to the parents and she would say something like, "So, I'm just wondering, what is it that keeps you up at night?" And if you could have heard the detailed questions being asked about the sodium levels, the pain levels, the testing that's being done, the protocols, the things that were possible, potential, maybe, perhaps, for cure. And then you would hear this very warm human question coming out. What is it that keeps you awake at night? What is it that keeps you up at night? Sometimes the parents were just floored by such a, sometimes they would think, foolish question, because it was so out of character for what we were talking about. But she would just then be quiet. She would look at them, and she would say, "I would love to know." And occasionally you'd have a family say something like, "We're getting bills every day in the mail. We're never going to be able to pay for all this. My child's dying, and we're hopelessly in debt. We're probably going to have to sell our home and declare bankruptcy. That's what keeps me awake at night." Or sometimes someone would say something like, "I'll tell you what keeps me awake at night. I have failed as a parent. My job is to protect my child, and my child is dying, and I know that. And I can't do a thing about it. And I'm so angry because I'm a failure." Sometimes things were much more mundane, like, "Well, I wonder who we can get to stay overnight because our regular caregiver's out, and that's what keeps me awake at night." Sometimes it was, worries about other children. Sometimes it was worried about jobs and careers and health insurance, big matters, of course. But the very fact of asking the question was huge, because it gave permission to think differently and to say what's really on your mind. Because sometimes those things were so heavily on the mind that it was almost a paralysis. And it was hard to get to the other things and talk about the other details because they were just stuck with these enormous thoughts and worries and concerns. Why do I tell you that story? I could say, well, I'm talking about my friend Debbie and how wonderful she is, but that's not the point. The point is, it's a good question for us to ask ourselves tonight, too. The question for us is, why are we here? What brings us here this evening? If you feel comfortable sharing some of that, please do. And if not, we'll move on forward. We're glad you're here, Debbie. Thank you. Thank you so much.
He had 2 strokes in the last 4 months, and they kicked the Parkinson's into final stages. And the final stage was he could not swallow. And of course, the doctor said, well, we can do, this or that. My husband said, no, that's not living. And the hard thing, Ernie was very talented. He really was an artist. Some of the things that he's drawn are just, you think he's a professional artist. He could fix almost anything. And, then I had things that I couldn't fix. And it would be, why aren't you here? But at the same time, I knew that what he would have been doing had he allowed some of those answers would not have been good, because he lost so many things that he loved to do. One of them, people find this interesting. He crocheted.
I remember.
And he made afghans and shawls and everything. And he couldn't do that for the last probably 6 or 7 months. His hands wouldn't do that. Working in the yard with another, and he couldn't do that. So at first it was easier for me, because I knew he was in God's hands, and that he was, I guess the word is comfortable going home. And so it seemed kind of easy, because I could say, well, he's better now and all that. And it seemed easy. But then, dear, I say I have moments. I don't have days. And I never did have days. Because, like you, I knew I was not alone. I had my church. I even had waiters and waitresses at places we went on a regular basis. And they helped him when he couldn't move his chair or get up easily. I had those people. And they made a difference. But it's still moments when I think about what I lost. And it's hard.
Yeah. Thank you, friend.
But there's one of the people I have.
Oh, God is
You are my sister.